Hey everybody, Sage here, and today we're going to take a look at a little known party game that most people who play Jackbox don't really talk about or play that much. Of course you already know by the title, so let's talk about one of my favorite Jackbox party games, Fakin It. For those who have never heard of it, Fakin It is a social deduction party game, and one of 5 games included in the Jackbox Party Pack 3, often considered to be the pack that put Jackbox on the map. The main gameplay premise involves finding the outlier. Each player is given a task to do, except for one random player who is considered the faker, and has to fake it without anybody else finding out. Now this kind of premise of finding the outlier, aka social deduction, is nothing new. Card games such as Mafia and Spyfall have a similar premise, as well as video games such as Town of Salem, Gmod's Trouble in Terrorist Town, and of course the formerly obscure Among Us. Jackbox themselves even took another look at the genre with Push the Button in the 6th party pack, but with more of a space theme to it. However, unlike those games, what makes Fakin It stand out from the rest are the rather unique gameplay features, which we'll go over later, and of course, the art style. Fakin It is most notable for being the first Jackbox game whose art and animation were done by then newcomer Owen Watson, whose previous work included the art for the indie party game Thief Town, a Wild West themed local multiplayer game. Owen Watson gave this game a rather unique identity with its 1960s-like art style, making this, in my opinion, not only one of my favorite Jackbox party games, but also my favorite social deduction game, period. Owen Watson would later go on to become the lead artist for Jackbox games, working on titles such as Monster Seeking Monster, Split the Room, Joke Boat, and The Devil's in the Details. Getting back on topic, Fakin It had been in development for many years, going all the way back to the very first party pack, up until it was finally greenlit for Party Pack 3. The game was finally unveiled in September of 2016, and was soon released alongside 4 other party games a month later, on October 18th, 2016, on all major platforms. But enough with the brief history. Let's talk about how it's played. In each round, each player will be given a task on their device, except for one random player who will get nothing but a try to blend in message. That person is the faker, but the rest of the group don't know that. The players have about 15 seconds to read the task and come up with their responses, while the faker has to try to blend in. Afterwards, the players give their responses right when the screen says go. The aim of the game is for all the players, or sleuths, to unanimously vote on who they think is the faker. If they pick the correct person, the faker is caught, and the sleuths get the points. The faker, however, can try to deceive people into picking the wrong person, and there are only 3 chances to catch him before he evades capture, resulting in the faker getting the points. In each round, a player can choose one of 4 categories. You've got Hands of Truth, which involves raising your hand. You've got a point, which involves pointing at another person. Face Value, which involves making a potentially weird face. And Number Pressure, which involves holding a certain number of fingers. And of course, we can't talk about Fakin It without addressing the elephant in the room. The orange guy. Now at first glance, he may look like a stand-in to complete the gang, but if you look inside the game's files, you'll discover that he was originally going to be in the game at some point in development, in an unused category called Noises Off. According to the developers, it would have involved making sounds, but ended up being scrapped due to, quote, not being able to process them all at once. Despite this, he would eventually gain a following among Jackbox fans, and would later appear as a cameo in future Jackbox party games, such as Monster Seeking Monster as a playable human disguise, Split the Room as one of the flying background objects, and The Devil's in the Details as part of a task that involves talking to your next door neighbor. After a few rounds or so, we then come to the final round of the game, Text You Up. This involves answering 3 prompts on your device, and the faker also gets to participate this time around, albeit with slightly different prompts. It's also my favorite part of the game, as it's simple, yet to the point. It doesn't require any hand gestures, making weird faces, or what could have been trying to make the most annoying sound in the world. It's also rather simple in the fact that the only way to try to figure out who's the faker is to just look at their responses. In fact, I like the final round so much that I might have drawn tons of fan art of this character. Probably more than I should have. After all is said and done, the player with the most points wins the game. There's also honorable mentions for Best Faker and Best Sleuth. And that, my friends, is how Fakin It is played. To sum up, it's a very fun game, and I would highly recommend people go check it out. There's only one problem, though. The game is not streamer friendly. It is one of the few Jackbox party games where it was designed for local multiplayer in mind. In other words, you have to have people around you to actually play it. The tutorial also makes it clear that
it's important to be able to see each other,
and as a result, makes this game kind of impossible to play with online friends, especially in today's streaming environment. Or so we thought. Because as it turns out, some people, including yours truly, have found a way to get around this. And this is where we segue into the main topic for this episode, the No Cam Edition. The No Cam Edition is a fan-made experimental method for playing Fakin It, where instead of having to see other players do the tasks, the players send in their responses through a private group chat. The rules pretty much work the same as in the main game, albeit with a few changes here and there. For one, each player would have to prep their response ahead of time, and have to submit the response right when the go screen hits. You don't want to be too early or too late, you want to be just at the right time. The categories are also done a bit differently in the No Cam Edition. For Hands of Truth, raising your hand is equivalent to answering yes to a question, while not raising your hand is the equivalent to answering the opposite. Thus, you would respond by either typing in yes or no, or Y or N, whichever is easier. For You Got a Point, pointing at a person is sort of equivalent to mentioning or adding a person on social media. Thus, you can respond by mentioning or adding another player simply by typing their name. I hope you're taking notes so far. For Face Value, making a face is sort of equivalent to using an emoji. You can use anyone you want as long as it has a face on it. However, you'll have to act fast at picking the right one, so keep that in mind. For number pressure, holding a number of fingers is equivalent to typing in a number from 0 to 10, and only those numbers, because of the number of fingers a person normally has. And as for the final round text you up, just focus on your device and that's it. Probably the most simple out of the other categories, really. Another reason why I like the final round more than the others. Need I say no more? Now, before I do end this episode, a few quick notes about the No Cam Edition. For one, this is not intended to be the recommended way to play Fakin It normally. The local way will always be the best way. Secondly, if you are going to do the No Cam Edition, I would highly recommend that you still use some form of voice communication, particularly for the discuss among your friends part. Now, it is technically possible to discuss in text form, but honestly, it's rather time-consuming. But if you're willing to go that route, do it at your own risk. Third, these instructions apply to any chat program that allows for private text and voice group conversations. These include Discord, Skype, and WhatsApp, just to name a few. I would not recommend using this method in live chat rooms unless you're desperate to play, so if you're willing to go that route, do it at your own risk. And that's really about it. If you manage to follow all of the instructions very carefully, you can start playing Fakin It with your friends online. And who knows, maybe it'll give Jackbox some ideas for a streamer-friendly sequel.
That aged great. I originally made this video back in 2021, before I restarted my whole YouTube thing. Since then, a lot has happened, and the game has gotten a bigger cult following, resulting in some merchandise like a t-shirt and a notebook, which I totally did not buy for my collection. I still like playing the original every now and then, but I was still wishing that a streamer-friendly version would be considered. So it made sense that I got really excited when a Fakin It sequel was announced. And boy did it not disappoint. Unfortunately, the game's not family-friendly, and it does contain some mature content that my younger viewers should probably stay away from. That and... yeah. At some point, I will have to cover this game for a possible remake of this video in the future. However, I don't know how I'm going to do that in what is considered a somewhat family-friendly show, but I'll find a way. In the meantime, I'll let my past self finish the rest of this video.
But for now, thanks very much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Take care.